welcome. And thank you for joining me in these high-tech studio in South Central Michigan. Let's talk about kind of what we've been talking about lately. The war drums and the saber rattling that we've been seeing and hearing about. As you know, this channel covers what we call New World Order news. We take what we think are the most important news stories each day, giving the listener an opportunity to get relevant information without the distractions of all of the other stuff. Because most of the news is distractions, as you guys listening to this channel know. Lately, because of what we do here, we've been forced to cover much of the Ukraine conflict, which forces us to have to cover some Russian and Chinese news with regard to the crisis, because this is the stuff that's real. Most of the rest of the news that we're seeing around this time is distractions. Now, briefly, for anyone new today, which here on Rumble looks to be many, Rumble's really hot right now compared to YouTube, and YouTube seems dead. Okay, so briefly, we've covered a lot of the war drum beating talk coming from both sides over the last 5 days or so, and you can go back to some of the videos and watch a lot of that. They're still pretty relevant. And each day we've noted how the West makes a statement that is viewed by any honest person with half a brain to be an escalation, in which case within hours we see a reply from Russia or one of its allies also being an escalating response. Like Kamala Harris in Munich telling the Russians that they've committed crimes against humanity and that they and their supervisors will be hunted down and brought to justice. You know, that brings a picture into your head of tanks and Americans hunting down Russians all the way into Moscow and not stopping, is what that says to me. What do you think it says to the Russians? And I'm not pro-Russian, so don't even say it. I'm pro-peace. I'm pro what's right. I'm pro-life. I don't trust Putin. But I don't trust this situation either. And it's best to just get out of it. And so after Kamala Harris said that, Putin replied later that day by summoning the U.S. ambassador to Moscow for talks with regard to this aggressive talk. And he paused Russia's involvement in the START treaty, the nuclear reduction treaty. Now, after Zelensky threatened China on President's Day, threatening World War III if China sides with Russia, we see Russia and China immediately in talks to supply Russia with 100 offensive combat drones. Probably our technology, so they're basically U.S. ones. That's just what it is. Okay, so then after another evening of saber rattling on all the nightly news programs, if you've been watching, that's why I'm the mainstream news watcher, because you got to watch them, all right, to figure out what's going on. It's a knack. You got to watch them to figure out what's going on, but you can't believe what they're saying. You got to read through the lines, notice their omissions and their reporting and their semantics, and then you can get a clear picture of things. Now, the news went into overdrive, as they've been lately, if you've noticed. And so then we see China yesterday announce to the world that they've concluded a 12-point peace plan for this conflict. And so let's take a quick look at it. According to Fox News, the plan opens with a statement, quote, "All parties must stay rational and exercise restraint, avoid fanning the flames and aggravating tensions, and prevent the crisis from deteriorating further or even spiraling out of control. All parties should support Russia and Ukraine in working in the same direction and resuming direct dialogue as quickly as possible so as to gradually de-escalate the situation and ultimately reach a comprehensive ceasefire." Sounds reasonable. The plan urges an end to Western sanctions against Russia, the establishment of humanitarian corridors for the evacuation of civilians, and steps to ensure the export of grain after disruptions caused global food prices to spike last year. And I've covered that. I've talked about the grain production, both in Ukraine and Russia, and how it's been limited here. For me, all part of this infrastructure collapse that we're witnessing. And by the way, 3 more Mexican state, I guess, oil refineries were on fire. One of them was in Texas, all at the same time in different locations. Okay, I think that this was part of the Great Reset. Okay, this was a bonus to this conflict because you have the number 3 and the number 5 grain producers in the world. This is very important, especially in Europe, but everywhere. And so I think that this was part of to go along with our food facilities and processing facilities that were blowing up a year ago all over the damn place. Okay, part of the overall plan. These people, when they do things, every little thing that they do has multiple benefits to them. Okay, so China's recognizing that. So they want to make sure that the export of grain isn't disrupted, but I don't know how you do that with a war raging in the country where you have to plant the stuff. All right. The proposal mainly elaborates on long-held Chinese positions, including that all countries' sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity be effectively guaranteed. It said nuclear power plants must be kept safe and the threat or use of nuclear weapons should be opposed. The plan also called for an end to the Cold War mentality, which is Beijing's standard term for what it regards as global dominance by the United States and its interference in other countries' affairs. You got to agree with it when it's right, but you don't trust China either because they're in on this. They're in on it, sitting back while the controllers pit the U.S. and Russia against each other, the 2 sole superpowers. They're going to annihilate each other, and China's there to pick up the scraps. But these guys are good with their narrative and the way that they do things. And so you see this, and so you're gonna agree with this because it's reasonable. Another common sense point is keeping industrial and supply chains stable. We all understand that. And finally, promoting post-conflict reconstruction. Okay, let's get into that one. It states that the international community needs to take measures to support post-conflict reconstruction in the conflict zones. China stands ready to provide assistance and play a constructive role in this endeavor. Now, this one, well, all you listening to this understand that while the military-industrial complex gets its bread buttered through these endless U.S.-provoked wars, the banking industry, the other arm of the controllers, imagine the controllers, one arm is the military-industrial complex, another arm is the banking industry. Okay? The banking industry gets its conflict and crisis payoffs this way, through the reconstruction of the country that has just been decimated, and it looks like China wants to be at the big boy table when the time comes for this windfall part of the manufactured crisis. So all of this is nothing new. It's choreographed. This is how it's always done. And China wants a seat at this new Potsdam conference, so to speak. Okay? They want their hands in this because that's a big part. It's just as much a moneymaker as those $500,000 bombs and tanks. And now, this all seems fine and dandy, but I don't think it's serious. I don't think that this is going to work. I think that this is all already planned out. I think this is simply China attempting to establish itself as a world superpower, a world arbiter, a world leader, a real player on the world stage, because that's important. Important because of what I think is coming next. And we'll get to that. We have to watch the signs, remember? Yesterday's video. One sign that I saw immediately after the word of this plan hit the internet came from a tweet from Mikhailo Podolyak, a senior advisor to Ukraine's President Zelensky. The tweet said, any plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine must involve the withdrawal of Moscow's troops back to Ukraine's 1991 borders at the time of the Soviet Union collapse. Now, folks, this would mean that Crimea would go back to Ukraine. Now, they say it in these ways, okay, that you must remove troops back to the 1991 borders. All he had to say was, you got to give Crimea back. But they don't say that because they got to have this layer of, most people won't know what that means. It means precisely Crimea. But again, the sheep won't know that. They'll just say, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay. And they won't even know what those borders were. Now, this isn't good for the people of Crimea. According to non-MSM reporting, and some MSM reporting, that they'll pull down and hide and whitewash years later, Crimea was being discriminated against, and with their water supply being controlled and limited by the Kiev regime. And these were some of the reasons that Putin annexed the area. Now, I know what many will say here. Well, the Crimea annex election was rigged by Putin, and the discrimination and the forced droughts are fake talking points created by Putin in order to give him cover for this annexation. I mean, you might be right. I mean, this guy's an ex-Intel agent. So, however, my alternative would mean for me to believe the MSM reporting on this issue. What would you guys suggest a person does? Knowing what we know, knowing that we wouldn't even know about the biolabs in Ukraine if not for some citizen journalist in mid-America on Twitter in his pajamas on the internet. Found it all open source, but none of the intel agencies could find any of it. Nobody, not even Victoria Nuland, none of them. I didn't. Should I forgo my critical thinking skills here and my trusted citizen journalists who've been right about every single thing, at least since COVID hit in early 2020? Or should I take the easy route and just let Morning Joe and Sean Hannity explain it to me? Easy choice for me. But my point is that we can see that Ukraine is going to stand firm here. Even going back to the 1991 boundaries, making it even worse with regard to peace now. We'll see how this goes, but if you recall, Xi met Putin on February 4th last year, about 3 weeks before the Russians invaded. And how'd that work out? They knew back then where this would lead, and they couldn't stop it from starting. Can they now stop it from continuing? I doubt it. Make what you will of this new peace plan. For me, I believe it'll fail. I believe that it's being done for two simple reasons. One, to make China look like the good guys, the peace lovers, trying to prevent war and death, giving the high road going forward. Second, is more nefarious. I believe that this is being done in order for China to demonstrate to the world that they are now finally a superpower. They're now sitting at the grown-up table during the family Christmas party holiday. They have clout now on the world stage. And if what I think is going to happen does indeed happen, and I'm talking about a nuclear exchange between the two major superpowers of the world, if that happens, then China will have placed themselves in the perfect position to be the sole superpower in the world after these two countries half annihilate each other. which has always been the plan as far as I'm concerned. Paving the way for China to be the main dog on the block and to play the role of the peacemaker, the nation builder, the policy setter, the world arbiter, as they remain peaceful during this nuclear conflict and maintain the high ground and help the world rebuild, etc. Dear listeners, another diabolical, insidious plan hatched by those demons in charge of things. Time is growing closer, and we have to spread this info as far as we can. So please share this if you can. And thank you, Danielle in West Texas. I'll never eat Memphis or Kansas City barbecue ever again. I promise. And again, if you enjoyed my videos, please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for watching.